In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use Sprites in MIT App Inventor 2 through a Collect the Coins game. In this game, the player can use their finger to move around this little stick figure on the screen collecting coins. Once they've gotten them all, they can play again. Let's start by adding the two labels at the top of the screen that show the player how many coins they've collected. Since we want them to be side by side, and we'll need two of them, one to say coins collected and one to actually hold the number of coins, to do that we'll need a horizontal arrangement. So let's go to Layout and choose Horizontal Arrangement. Now we can put two labels side by side, so we can go to User Interface and drag down two labels. The first one we want to say coins collected, so we can change that by clicking on it and then going under its properties and changing text to coins collected. The second one we can leave as blank for now, and we'll adjust that in the blocks. Now let's get to the fun part. So in order to have animations in App Inventor, we have to use what's called sprites. And sprites are just objects that can move around on the screen. To get those, we go under Drawing and Animation. And there are two kinds of sprites. There are balls and ImageSprites. The only difference between the two is that with ImageSprites, we can control what it looks like, whereas with balls, it always has to be a ball. We can adjust the size and we can adjust the color, but it's always circular. In this case, our coins are going to be balls because they're just circles, but our player, is going to be an image sprite because we want to have an image that actually shows a person on it. Now you'll see that if you try to drag these directly onto the screen, it doesn't work. Nothing comes up. And that's because whenever we have sprites, we have to put them on a canvas first. So drag the canvas onto the screen. It's going to be really small at first, and we want to take up the entire screen because we want our coins to be anywhere on the screen. So to change that, let's go under its properties, and right now its height and width are automatic, but instead we want to change it to fill parent, and that means fill the entire screen. So do that for both the height and the width. Now we can put our image and our balls on it. So go ahead and drag an image, and I'm just going to put it in the upper left-hand corner. Now we need to upload an image that we want to use. I'm going to put a link in the description to the stick person that I used, so you can go ahead and download that. Once you have that, you can click on Picture, and then Upload File, and then choose File, and then go to wherever directory you had put the downloaded picture and upload it. And there it is. It's really big at first, so we want to make it a more reasonable size. So let's go to height and width and change that. I found that 60 by 60 worked as a good size for the person, so we can change that here. Click on Pixels and type in 60. Alright, now we just need to put on our coins. So all you need to do is drag a whole bunch of coins onto the screen. They can be however many as you want. I'm just going to do 10. And it doesn't matter where you put these because we're going to be randomizing their locations in the blocks. So you can put them wherever you want. Alright, now let's go to blocks. First of all, we'll need a global variable that represents the number of coins that the user has gotten so far, because once they've gotten all the coins, then we want to end the game. So let's make that variable. We can go under Variables and choose the first one, initialize global name to. Our name can just be coins collected. And we can make that 0 because the user hasn't collected any in the beginning. Now we need to add code so that whenever the user drags on our person, it actually moves. That's not something that's automatically coded in. We have to do that ourselves. So click on ImageSprite1, again that represents our person, and then choose the second one, which says when ImageSprite1.dragged. And that means when the user taps it with their finger and drags it across the screen. So pull that down. And when the sprite is dragged, we want to move it to wherever it was dragged to. So to do that, click on ImageSprite1 again, go down to call ImageSprite1.moveTo. And we want to move it to the variables current x and current y. That represents where the finger has moved, and that's where we want to move the person. So let's do that. We'll now add the code for controlling what happens when our image sprite collides with one of our coins. So in order to detect when that happens, we can go to ImageSprite1 and choose the first one, which says when ImageSprite1.collide with. This means when there's a collision or when our person hits one of the coins. So go ahead and choose that. First of all, we need to increment our coins collected variable, so we need to add one more to that. So I'm going to mouse over this and choose set global coins collected to. And since we're increasing it by 1, we want to set it to 1 plus what its previous value was. So let's go to math and get the plus operator. And first we'll need a 1. And then we need to add whatever itself is. So go ahead and mouse over coins collected again and choose get coins collected. Now we've incremented our coins collected variable, but we need to make sure that actually updates on the screen. This is this part here that currently says text for label 2. We want to make sure that that updates with what the new value for the number of coins collected is. So to do that, we can click on label 2 because that's the label that has the number of coins collected, and we'll choose set label 2.text2, and we want to set it to the new value of coins collected. So let's get that. Now we need to set the coin that was bumped into to invisible because we want to make it look like the coin has gone away once the player hits it. So to do that, we don't know exactly which coin it's going to be at this point. So we can't just go under, say, like ball 1 and then find its invisible method. Instead, we're going to need to use the any component feature, which you can find down here. So scroll down to the bottom and click plus. This allows us to have things happen to any one of our components. So we can click on any ball, and then these are equivalent to the functions that you would find under the specific balls, except for they also have a part that say for components. So we can tell it which component this is happening to, or which coin is going away. So go ahead and scroll down to setBall.visible. And so this allows us to control whether it's visible or not, so we can make it disappear. So bring that down. We can get the component, meaning we can tell which coin needs to disappear, by this other thing. So whenever our person collides with something, it tells us what it collides with, and that's this other variable. So we can choose get other and put that in the component, and we do not want it to be visible, so we need to put a false here. Now, in most cases, that's all we need to do. But if that was the last coin there, then we need to make sure that we tell the user then end the game. So let's check to see if that was the last coin, and we can do that because of this coins collected variable. This starts off with 0, and then we add 1 to it each time we collect another coin. So if this reaches the total number of coins, which in my case is 10, then we know that they have won the game. So to check to see if they got all 10 coins, let's go to control and choose this if statement. And we need to put a condition here to say if something is true. So in that case, we want to check if coins collected is equal to 10. So that's an equal sign that we can get out our math. Let's get the value of coins collected. And we need to say if that is equal to 10 or however many coins you had. So I'm going to get this number and change it to 10. In that case, we need to bring up a notifier that tells the user what happened. So we need to go back to Designer to add that notifier. Let's go to Designer and go under User Interface and drag this notifier onto the screen. Now we can go back. Now that we have that notifier, we can bring it up once the user has collected all of their coins. So let's go over here and scroll down to our notifier. Click on that and then go down to where it says Show Choose Dialog. And make sure you get Show Choose Dialog this time. Go ahead and pull that down here. Now we need to tell it a few things. Let's start with a message. So that's going to need text. I'll go to my text and go and get the blank text. The message, I'm just going to say you collected all the coins. And then I'll make the title Game Over. I'm actually going to leave button 2 text and button 1 text blank because there's also this cancelable option, so that means that there's going to be this cancel button that the user can click to make the notifier go away. Ordinarily, button 1 and button 2 would be used if you want the user to make a choice in the notifier, but we don't need to do that. You might be wondering why we even use this show choose dialog as opposed to a notifier that doesn't even have these buttons at all. But the important thing is that only this notifier allows us to be able to trigger an action once the user has clicked a button on the notifier. None of the other notifiers have that capability, and that's going to be important later on. So I'm just going to make these two both blank text by going to text and choosing these. So now we need to make a procedure, and a procedure is basically a function. It's a process that we'll go through multiple times in the program. And we'll want to make this procedure whenever we have a new game. So either when we first open the screen for the first time, or once the user collects all the coins and we need to reset the game and go again. And because we're doing that multiple times, to save us the trouble of copying the code multiple times, we can just put it all in this one procedure. So I'm just going to make some more space over here, and then to define a procedure, we go to Procedures and choose the first one. I'm going to call this New Game. So in this function, we're going to do a few things. Most notably, we're going to make all of our coins reappear and shuffle them around, so put them in random locations. And before we do that, we have to make sure that we disable our sprite being our person character. And that's important because if we don't do that, there's a chance that as we're moving the coins around, it will actually end up on top of a coin, and then the user would have already collected a coin before the game even begins. So we want to make sure that we can disable it, and then we'll re-enable it at the end. So to disable it, we're going to go to ImageSprite1 and scroll down to set ImageSprite1.enabled to. And we can drag that here. And we want it to be not enabled, so we want this to be false. So let's go under Logic and choose false. Now we're going to need to randomize the locations of all the buttons. And we can't do that just in one line. We'll have to go through each of the buttons and randomize its location. Now it's also going to be useful to us here if we can also set the color and size of the buttons. Because if you remember, when we first created these buttons, they were all black, but we'd like to make them kind of a gold color. And they were also a little bit smaller than we would like them to be. Now we could go in manually and change the color and radius ourselves, but it's easier to just do it all in the code to save us that trouble. So we're going to need to loop over all of the blocks. So we'll use a for loop that allows us to go through a certain process for each of our blocks. In order to do that, we have to first put all of our coins in a list. So we're going to store that list in a local variable. So I'm going to go under Variables and choose Initialize the local name to. This is local rather than global because we only need this list of coins in this function and nowhere else. So I'll drag that down. And I'm going to call it coins. We need to make a list, so I'll go to Lists and choose Make a List. Now each element in this list is going to be a coin. So go ahead and just put as many slots here as you have coins. So to do that, just click on this and keep dragging these over until you have as many as you put on your screen. So I'll do 10. Now we need to put a coin in each of these slots. To do that, click on one of your balls and then scroll to the bottom where it just says ball 1. Now we can put that on. And to make it a little bit easier, I'm just going to copy and paste this 10 times. And start putting these in and changing them to the proper ball. So this will be ball 2, this is ball 3, etc. Now that we've made this list, we can start our for loop. So let's go under Control and get the for loop that says for each item in list and pull that down. So that allows us to do a certain process for each thing in our list. We need to tell it which list, and that's just coins. So I'm going to mouse over coins and choose Get Coins. For each item in our list, first of all, we want to move it to a random location. Just like we did earlier over here, we're going to need to go under Any Component. So I'm going to scroll down here and click this, and click on Any Ball. Now we need the one that moves the ball, so we're going to choose Call Ball.MoveTo and pull that in. We need to tell it which component, and that's just item, because item is going to take on each value in coins. I'm actually going to change this from item to coin so that we know what's going on. So our component is coin, and X and Y is telling us which position to put it at. And just to show you, x represents how far along this way we are, and y represents how far along this way we are. And 0, 0 would be up here. And then if x is really big and y is 0, it's going to be somewhere along here. And then if x is 0 and y is big, it's going to be somewhere around down here. So let's go back to blocks. We want to choose a random number to make our x's and y's. So to do that, go under Math and choose random integer from 1 to 100. But we're going to want to change these values to make sure it ends up in an appropriate spot on the screen. I'm just going to change this to 5 for a way to start. That minimizes the chance that the coin ends up where the person is, although that still can happen sometimes. So you might want to play around a little bit with this value, but I found that 5 works pretty well. And then for my end value, I want to make this the width of the screen minus 20. And the 20 is just a little bit of a buffer to make sure it doesn't end up on the very edge of the screen. So I'm just going to get rid of this 100, and then we'll need subtraction, so I'll go under Math and choose the subtraction. To get the width of the screen, I click on Screen 1, and then go to Width. And it's width minus 20. Again, these might not be perfect on which device you're using, so you might want to play around with these a bit. But I'm just going to do 20, so I'll go to Math and choose the number, and make it 20. For y, I'm going to get another random integer block. Again, I found that 5 worked well for the first value. Then for the upper bound, I found that the height minus 100 worked best. So I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm just going to copy and paste this block here and change this from width to height, and I'm going to make it minus 100. Next, we need to make our coin visible, because if you remember before, we made our coins invisible once the person collided with them. And even if we move it to a different location, it's still going to be invisible, so we need to make it visible. So let's again go under Any Component and choose Any Ball. And then go ahead and pick setBall.visible and pull that down. The component is going to be coin, so I'm going to get coin. And we want to make this true because it is visible. So go to Logic and choose True. Now there are two other things we also need to do here, and that's to set the color and the radius. I'm going to go under Any Component and to Any Ball, and then to the color one. It's called Paint Color, and it's of the component coin. And to get a color, go up here, click on Colors, and then choose whatever color you want, but I'm going to choose this gold. And we need to change the radius. So again, I'm going to go under Any Ball and choose Radius. This is a measure of how big our ball is. The component is the coin. I found that a radius of 10 worked well. So I'm going to go up here, go to Math, and get that number. Alright, so that's all we need to do for each of the coins, but there are a few other things we need to do here. We also need to move our person to the upper left-hand corner, just so it kind of resets the game. So we need to move that person. Let's go to ImageSprite1, and then this is going to be a very similar block to what we did with the coins. It's this one here that says call ImageSprite1.moveTo. And we want to move it to the upper left-hand corner, and that's going to be at 0, 0. So go to Math and choose those zeros. Now I'm going to copy and paste this. Now we also need to enable our sprite, because if you remember, we disabled our sprite up here, so now we need to enable it again. So I'm just going to copy and paste this block because it's going to be pretty similar, and then drag it down. And I'm going to change it from false to true so that it is enabled. We also need to reset our collected coins variable because now we're playing again and they have no coins now. So I'm going to go to Variables and choose Set and make coins collected 0. Lastly, we need to update the label that shows how many coins they've collected. That's label 2, so I'll choose label 2 and set the text to the new value of coins collected. So I'll go to Variables and choose Get and make it coins collected. Now that we've actually made this procedure, we need to figure out where to call it, because just defining the procedure by itself doesn't do anything. It needs to know when we go through and run all of these steps. One time that we run this is when the screen first initializes, because we have to go through all these steps of randomly placing the coins and setting their colors and their radii and such. So when the screen initializes, we want to call this procedure. We can find out when the screen initializes by clicking on screen 1 and then choosing when screen1.initialize. And then we need to call this procedure. So I'll go to procedures and choose call new game. We also want to call this procedure once they've collected all the coins and we start a new game. And now it comes in handy that we use this show choose dialog notifier, because if you go under notifier, there's one at the top that says when notifier 1 after choosing, and as it says, this only works for a show choose dialog. So let's bring this one down. Choice doesn't actually matter to us. That would be important if we had different things for button 1 text and button 2 text, but they're always just going to click this cancel button because that's the only button that's going to appear. So we can just ignore that. And all we need to do here is again call that procedure. And that's it. Congratulations on making your coin collecting app. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe.